Okay, so as promised, today I'm going to do a little bit of a video about manga that I've read and that I'm currently reading. I know I've done a few snippets here and there in the past. I did a video on Oran High School Host Club, which is here behind me, and I think I talked a bit about Nozaki-kun, Classroom of the Elite, but today I thought I'd do something a little bit longer and more dedicated. So first, I was going to talk about my history with manga because it kind of gives you grounding into where I'm coming from with this genre. For those who don't know, manga is a Japanese graphic novel style storytelling. This one is here because I was going to start with the manga that I first started reading when I first started reading manga. This, in fact, was the first manga I started reading. But I'm jumping the gun. Okay, so manga, Japanese graphic novels, more or less. That's dumbing it down. Manga, people think of them as comic books, but a lot of them are not for children. Adults read them too, and they're kind of, a lot of anime is based on manga, so you'll see a lot of crossover there. In a lot of cases, I saw the anime first and then read the manga. That's true of Cardcaptor Sakura. I started reading manga when I was an undergrad. And I first got invited to an anime club, and I was enjoying the anime, so I decided I wanted to read the source material. I am old. Okay, so the manga was not available in English at the time. This was the 90s, and I guess they were starting to be, isn't that cute? These came with the little quote cards in them. Okay, anyway, so I had to special order manga from Japanese bookstores and then hope that somebody online had done a translation so that I could kind of read along, or I had to very painstakingly, with very, very limited Japanese ability, thank God for furigana, try and decipher the story for myself. When it was based on an anime, that was easier because I kind of already knew the story, and so I could intuit a lot of what I was seeing and the words that I knew, because I didn't understand yet, the way they conjugated and things like that. But I was able to do it more or less. I have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks full of me translating Japanese manga. But anyway, I started out with, this was an easy one to start out with because it's for younger readers, so the actual Japanese is not super difficult, and like I said, the furigana, which is the little characters next to the kanji that tell you how to read the kanji, made it easier for me to look it up in a Japanese dictionary. I started out reading Cardcaptor Sakura, other way because it's Japanese, and Tokyo Babylon, and X. And you'll notice these are all by Clamp. Clamp remains probably my favorite author, but they're actually a group of women who create the stories and draw the manga. And I just love their style and I love their storytelling. And so, I recently heard they signed a deal with Netflix, so I'm super excited about that. But anyway, yeah, I started out with Cardcaptor Sakura, which is a magical girl manga about this girl who finds these magical cards. They're called club cards. And I actually have a set of club cards. I had that. My computer froze up a little bit. But anyway, gave me an opportunity to go get my club cards. You can see that there's this whole deck of them in a box here. I'm not going to pull them all out. But anyway, and I have my Kero-chan, and he... So to say I was into Cardcaptor Sakura is an understatement. But I think, well, I will say Toya and Yukito are my all-time favorite couple in any kind of fictional world, literary world. They're like my core. Anyway. And then I think, though, Tokyo Babylon had the most impact on me because that story is much darker, and I'm all for the dark and the angst. And it's about Subaru and his twin sister and their friend Seishiro, and Subaru falling in love with Seishiro. And there are some problems with that outside of the story. The fact that Subaru's like 16 and Seishiro's like in his 20s, I think. But we'll come back to that as a problem in a number of things. Look, I'm a Magane character today. I can't put my contacts in because I had like this weird thing going on with my eye, which is why I wasn't doing videos for a while. But yeah, anyway, sorry. I got distracted by the glare on my glasses. I apologize. I try not to wear my glasses in videos because of the glare. Oh, there go my ears. Because of the glare. But sometimes it just can't be helped. Anyway, Tokyo Babylon. I highly recommend it. I heard that this is one they're going to adapt for Netflix. I certainly hope so. Tokyo Babylon's story between Subaru and Seishiro continues in X as one of a huge cast of characters. So X, those who are familiar, X, also called X 1999, I think that was only the English one. This was one of the first ones I was able to get in English, but this one is the Japanese. Anyway, X is about these two factions, Dragons of Earth, Dragons of Heaven, and them fighting over the fate of the world, basically. And the main character, Kamui, is, you know, this, I don't know, high schooler, I guess. And he has to make a choice, but his choice affects this other guy, Fuma, who's his they're kind of like binary stars, and if one is one thing, then the other has to be the other. When I was in college, I was part of this like online role-playing group, and I was assigned the character of Kamui, and I was abused a lot because the dynamic there is very homoerotic, which I don't mind. I'm all there for it. Though it was very weird to be on the receiving end of that because that's not usually where I am. Anyhow, so I went on to read things like Utena, and I watched Fushigi Yugi, and I own the manga, but I've never actually read it. But like, you know, I went through, it was, like I said, mostly Clamp, and then there for a while I wasn't reading manga at all, and just recently, I think because it's so easy to read quickly, it doesn't require like a huge commitment, at least for me, to read manga. Even a large series, I can get through it pretty rapidly. So under stressful circumstances, and I'm sorry, my glasses are like, under stressful circumstances, I find manga to be my go-to. So in the past year or so, I have been reading it again. I read Fruits Basket a couple years ago. I got it all at the library and read the entire series because we've been watching the rebooted anime, my son and I, and we've been really enjoying it. And I was like, okay, I want to go read that source material. So for me, a lot of times, again, it starts with the anime, and then I'm like, okay, I want to read this. And then I found at the library Takane Hana, or Takane and Hana. And that's a series that I have been reading. And we're going to talk about that. Hang on. Let's discuss Takane and Hana. I've read some of it in Japanese and some of it in English as it's been, like, you know, made available. It's kind of weird going back and forth, but it's kind of fun because I like to see how they translate. Now that I'm much better at, I'm still not fluent by a long shot, but now that I'm better at Japanese, it's interesting to see how they translate some things in English. If I look at it in Japanese and then look at it in English, and I'm like, oh, well, I wonder, like, that's an interesting choice. So I've talked about this series, I think, in past videos, so I won't linger too long. I really, really enjoy it. It's less now than when I started, but that's only because it's kind of feeling stretched out at this point. But overall, I find it an enjoyable series. So it's about Takane. He is the prospective heir to a very large corporation, fortune-ish kind of thing, and his grandfather, who runs the business, wants him to get married and settle down before he's really ready to consider Takane like a suitable heir. So Takane has kind of been avoiding it, but his grandfather arranges a marriage meeting where Takane's supposed to come meet a prospective bride. Hana is, again, I apologize for the glare, but Hana's older sister is supposed to go to this meeting, and she refuses to go, so her father, being desperate, has Hana dress up as slightly older. Hana's like 16. Again, we're back to the dynamic of someone very young and someone older. I think Takane's at the beginning 26 or 27. So there's like a 10, 11 year age gap there. And this, I think, is something that in Japan is a pretty standard trope, and it doesn't necessarily play as well in America, where we kind of go, oh no. But I don't think, in Japan it has quite, I mean, they acknowledge that it's problematic that he's dating like a high schooler, because like he does fall for her and she falls for him, and then a lot of the story is them trying to cover up the fact that he's dating a high schooler because that would look bad. Anyway, whereas in America it's like, oh, he got himself a young'un. I don't know. It's complicated social issues are involved that I am not prepared to go into. I will acknowledge there are problems. I find it more problematic, however, that Takane, that Takane is romanticized, even though he's, at least at the start, pretty verbally abusive. He's he negs Hana a lot, and I mean, she holds her own. She pulls some tricks on him. But the fact that they kind of romanticize his behavior, and that to me was worse. Now, I feel like they try to balance it out by showing that Takane's actually really insecure, and eventually we get some of his backstory about why that is and why he's like not at all assured of his like place in the world and all this kind of thing. But in the meantime, we're still supposed to be like, I don't know, I think we're supposed to root for this relationship, even though there are some serious problems with it. And to be honest, even though I enjoy the banter between Takane and Hana, and it's almost brotherly sisterly to me, and I get like a good relationship is based on friendship, and maybe they get to be friends, and then it's but the chemistry lessens the longer the manga goes on. For me, that is a personal feeling. Obviously these things are subjective, but like I'm like, oh, I'm liking them together less and less rather than more and more. I don't know. I think I've got 16. There's 16 volumes. I don't have all of them. Like I said, I read most of them from the library, and then you couldn't go to the library anymore, so I had to start buying manga. But yeah, so I don't know how much longer this goes on, or if it wraps up anytime soon. But I mean, I'm enjoying it, but I'm very aware of its flaws. Now, that is also true of Black Butler. Okay, so this one is definitely more for grown-ups. Like, I would say Takane Hana, like, I don't know, new adult. I mean, high school to new adult age, right? Black Butler, which I'm only reading in English. I haven't bothered to try and get the Japanese, is pretty... Okay. A lot of it, so far, I've only read the first 16 volumes, and it goes on. Like, last time I looked, there were 60-something volumes of this. Again, I started by watching the anime. The anime is pretty dark. My kids watched it with me. My 12-year-old and my 15-year-old. And there were times when I was like, oh, I should not have let them watch this. But here we are. I've never been one to shelter my kids either, so, oh well. If we need to discuss it, we'll discuss it. This guy is Sebastian. He's a demon and a butler. He's a demon pretending to be a butler. Basically, the other main character, Ciel, Phantom Hive, which is such a stupid name. I'm sorry, Ciel. I can kind of like Ciel. It's almost like Shelly. I don't know, but the Phantom Hive thing, I don't know. That to me was a stretch. Being picky as a writer now, but he's 13. Sebastian's been with him for 3 years. Okay, so when on his 10th birthday, if I'm doing the math correctly, and this is all set in the 1880s, on his 10th birthday, his house was burned down and his family was murdered. Or his family was murdered and then the house was burned down, whatever, something like that. And Xia was presumed dead, but he'd actually been kidnapped by this shadowy group of aristocrats who wanted to, and it's not clear because it unfolds slowly, but it's implied he was sexually abused and he was branded. Maybe there's like some human trafficking stuff going on. But there was also like an element of human sacrifice because these aristocrats were trying to summon demons to give them wealth and immortality or something along those lines. It's, again, kind of shady. It's kind of like slowly being revealed. Ciel's actually trying to figure out who did this to him and get his revenge. That's why he's allied himself with this demon who basically, when Ciel is in a cage and about to be like sacrificed, he calls out, and Sebastian, the demon, whose name is not actually Sebastian, that's a name Ciel gives him later, but like he shows up and he's like, yeah, okay, let's make a deal. And so they make a contract, and Sebastian will protect Ciel and be loyal to him and never lie to him, and he'll help him find out who did this to his family in return for being able to devour Ciel's soul once that mission is complete. Fair enough, the anime has a lot of sort of, again, homoerotic undertones. The author, Yana Toboso Yana, I don't know, but has said that it was intended to be more explicit yaoi, or what we call boys love, in some cases BL, because again, Ciel's like 13 and we've got like, I don't know, this demon could be hundreds, thousands of years old. It's unclear, but he presents as obviously an adult male. So so far the anime has been more homoerotic than the manga. I've read 16 volumes of the manga so far, And there's definitely more made of CL's being actually affianced to his cousin Elizabeth, who is a year older than him. So obviously they're not getting married anytime soon. But like, obviously the fandom is very like Sebastian / CL, right? They're all in on that. And yeah, I mean, you know, again, that is something that in Japan seems to be a pretty common trope, that and like the teacher-student thing, and like there are some very definite tropes in Japanese manga and anime that are, to wider audiences, suspect, to say the least, and terribly wrong. You know, you're like, this is an underage kid and you're sexualizing him, and that's kind of not okay. You know, CL spends a lot of time dressed as a woman. You know, there's a lot of questionable content, I guess. But it's also not meant for kids. This is definitely like a grown-up kind of thing. And like I said, so far in the manga, it is far less explicit. The author said she was told to tone it down because if it had been straight yaoi, it wouldn't sell. I think the fandom has proved that wrong. But so far, it's a very interesting story. I'm waiting for like the slow reveal of what actually happened and who did it and why. And in the meantime, there's very like kind of arcs of stories. There was a zombies on a steamliner story. There was like evil circus story. I'm in the middle of like weird goings on at a private school, you know, an elite boarding school, I should say. And so then we get, you know, Sebastian masquerading as a teacher. We get the teacher-student dynamic thing. I'm reading, I know it looks like you're like, you already showed me that. This was Cardcaptor Sakura. This is Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card, which is the newest Cardcaptor Sakura arc. And there was a season of it, anime-wise, waiting for more. In the meantime, it is coming out in English too. I do have like, but less quickly than the Japanese. So if you get impatient, learn Japanese, I guess. I don't know. And finally, I'll talk about Nozaki-kun, which is right now my favorite thing to read. Black Butler. I'm reading Black Butler and Nozaki-kun. Like, I'm going back and forth between them because one is very dark, and this is one of the only things that makes me laugh out loud. Like, it is very hard to get me to laugh out loud at something I'm reading. Like, something can be hilarious, but this doesn't. Like, the kids will come in to my room where I'm reading and just be like, what is going on? It's an anime on Netflix. I think it covers like the first 3 or 4 volumes, but there's a lot more. Now, this is not cohesive in the way the anime is cohesive. It's been made cohesive, but the actual, it's not really a manga. It's a collection. It's a 4-panel comic strip, and in some cases, yes, the story continues over several comics. You think of like Garfield or Peanuts or something like that, right? Like, you read it in chunks, and you kind of have to. Anyway, you also have to, I think, appreciate Japanese humor. I find it really, really funny. Obviously, because I'm just laughing. Sometimes I laugh so hard I cry. Definitely at the anime, I laughed really, really hard at different points. I highly recommend it as a mood booster. It's about this mangaka. He's a manga creator. Sorry, my computer is like, you're not doing anything. Okay, he is a manga creator, and he writes shoujo manga, but nobody, like, he's a high schooler, but nobody believes him when he tries to tell them. So he's just like, well, whatever. And he's just kind of very focused on his art. And he's got this girl who has a crush on him, who gets roped into helping him. And he's got a couple other high school friends who help him with things like backgrounds and beta. And, you know, if you don't know those terms, you'll learn them reading this. But, yeah, and, you know, and color tones and stuff, screen tones. But, and it's just kind of this day-to-day, there's a really fun cast of characters. It's really silly and to the point of absurd at times. And it's just a delight to read or to watch if you haven't seen the anime. Like I said, just a huge mood booster, just very silly, they're all really slim volumes too, so they're pretty quick reads. I can do like 3 or 4 in a day if I can just sit and read without interruption. So it is definitely probably the one I would most recommend, at least right now in the current climate of the world, as a mood boost. I would recommend Tokyo Babylon if you're okay with angst, because the turn of events is pretty like dark. Cardcaptor Sakura is light and fluffy. Like I said, Toya and Yukito don't get nearly enough time. In my, you know, perfect world, it would be all about them, but maybe it's one of those things where a little goes a long way, and something that was all about them would be actually too much. It's hard for me to imagine that anything would be too much with those two, but they make me happy. If you haven't seen it, I enjoyed the anime more than the manga. The anime kind of goes farther out, I think, than the manga did, but the manga's good too. And you know, I've talked about My Next Life as a Villainess. That one's really fun. That exists as manga, light novels, and anime. Take your pick. Classroom of the Elite, which is back here. Those are light novels. I think they started making a manga of that too, but I've only read the light novels and seen the anime, hoping for a second series of that. Yeah, I think that about covers it. So, if you have questions, comments, suggestions for other manga that I should read, anything like that, let me know in the comments. And I will see you next time. This is already getting really long, so I apologize for that. And I'm kind of all over the place, but like I have an injured foot, I have the eye thing, I've been like out of commission for a while. So there's just been a lot going on. Yes, okay. And should we talk about Bridgerton? Because that's a whole other thing, not at all related to manga, but let me know if you want me to talk about my feelings about that show. I haven't read the books, I won't read the books, and I'll tell you all about it if you ask. Okay, take care, have a good week, month, whatever time between now and the next time I chat at you.